Hello there, and my name is Brent Smith, and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and this is the Common Constitutionalist post-New Year's, first of the new year, weekend video podcast, and welcome to it. Thank you for viewing, if in fact you're viewing. If you're not, you know. So the video podcast, I've got two topics basically. The first one is climate change collapsed an empire. I'll leave it at that. And the second one, Democrat constitutional amendments. That's just whatever. So that's what we're going to be discussing today on the weekend edition of the Common Constitutionalist video podcast. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast.
All right, so this is from the UK Daily Mail. I occasionally get some pieces from there, and I thought this was rather interesting, and you're going to have to hang in there till the end, because I make a point out of this. So Akkadia was the world's first empire, they say. It was established in Mesopotamia around 4,300 years ago after its ruler, Sargon of Akkad, united a series of independent city-states. So they say. Akkadian influence spanned along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers from what is now southern Iraq, through to Syria and Turkey. For its time, it was a pretty vast empire. The north-south extent of the empire meant that it covered regions with different climates, ranging from fertile lands in the north, which were highly dependent on rainfall — it was one of Asia's breadbaskets — to the irrigation-fed alluvial plains to the south. It appears that the empire became increasingly dependent upon the productivity of the northern lands and used those grains that they harvested from the northern land of the empire to feed its army and redistribute to food supplies to key supporters. Then, about a century after its formation, say 4,200 years ago, the Akkadian Empire just suddenly collapsed. It followed by the mass migration and conflicts. The anguish of the era is perfectly captured in the ancient Curse of Akkad text. I don't know where they got text from 4,300 years ago, but hey, whatever. Which describes a period of turmoil with water and food shortages. Quote, the large arable tracts yielded no grain, the inundated fields yielded no fish, the irrigated orchards yielded no syrup or wine, the thick clouds did not rain, unquote. So one of the most prominent views championed by Yale archaeologist Harvey Weiss is that it was caused by an abrupt onset of drought conditions which severely affected the productivity of the northern regions of the empire. The rich soils of the early periods were replaced by large amounts of wind-blown dust and sand, suggesting the onset of drought conditions. Subsequently, Marine Corps from the Gulf of Oman and the Red Sea, which linked the input of dust into the sea to distant sources in Mesopotamia, provided further evidence of regional drought at the time. Now, stalagmite data from Iran sheds new light on the controversy. And it doesn't seem like much of a controversy because I got into this late, when they already established all this nonsense. In a study published by the journal PNAS, I don't know what it stands for, but PNAS, penis? I don't know, provided a very well-dated and high-resolution record of dust activity between 5,200 and 3,700 years ago. The studied dust, built over thousands of years on stalagmites in the Gol-Izard caves in Iran, several hundred miles to the east of the former Akkadian Empire, but it is directly downwind from it. So the desert dust has a high concentration of magnesium. Stick with me here. And so that's how they knew that it came from this certain area in the Akkadian Empire. So they study these stalagmites, and the stalagmites have an additional advantage, they say, by being able to be precisely dated using uranium-thorium chronology. The stalagmites indicate two major drought periods, which started 4,510 years ago and 4,260 years ago, that lasted 110 years and 290 years respectively. The latter event occurs precisely at the time the Akkadian Empire's collapse and provides a strong argument that, ready, climate change was at least in part responsible. Here we go. The collapse was followed by, here we go. The collapse was followed by mass migration from the north to the south, which was met with much resistance and conflict by local populations that were already there. In other words, they didn't want these Akkadian migrants, but the Akkadian migrants had nowhere to go because of the drought conditions from climate change. So the Akkadian migration got so bad that, ready for this, a wall was built, named the Repeller of the Amorites. They actually named this wall, not the Trump wall, but the Repeller of the Amorites wall. It was built between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers in an effort to control migration or control immigration. The big beautiful, now this is me talking, not them. The big beautiful wall was about 112 miles long. Now, technology the way it is today, that doesn't seem like much, but believe you me, back 4,200 years ago, 4,000 years ago, that was quite an accomplishment 4,200 years ago. So what can we take from this ancient event? Two things, actually, we can take from this ancient event. One is this is the reason why modern-day global warming alarmists changed global warming to climate change. 4,200 years ago, the climate changed, which drove a whole entire empire into collapse, and they had to leave the area because of the climate changed. Of course it changed. It always changes, and that's the nice thing about climate change. So they had to pack up and move. But that's the beauty of today's climate change or global warming scam, is that the climate's going to change all the time, and there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do about it. They couldn't do anything about it 4,200 years ago, and today it's no different. We can't do anything about it now. Think about 4,200 years ago. There were no SUVs, there were no fossil fuels. Factories weren't spewing CO2s into the atmosphere at alarming rates, yet the climate still changed, and rather abruptly, apparently. And so these people literally had to leave. The entire empire collapsed because of climate change. Not man-caused. It couldn't have been caused by man at the time, right? And so that's the folly of this thing. But it's just one more example of the foolishness and folly of modern-day climate change alarmists, or whatever you want to call it, thinking that we can somehow today capture the current climate and hold it to the standard that we think is appropriate now. What the temperature, what the climate's supposed to be now. It's the height of stupidity. It's the height of ridiculousness, dishonesty, and arrogance. The second point is obviously the Repeller of Amorites wall. Why would they go through all that trouble and effort at the time, 4,000 years ago, to build a 112-mile long wall if it was, as Nancy Pelosi says, and the Democrats, ineffective? Walls are ineffective. They're immoral and they're ineffective. No, they're not. They were aware, and so are we, and so are the Democrats, but the local populations that wanted to keep the Akkadian Empire away from their land knew darn well that the best play that they had was to build a dadgum wall. They knew it, and we know it now, and so do the Democrats. The lying Democrats will tell you that walls are ineffective and they're immoral. No, they're not. They're demonstrably effective. And that's all I've got about that. I just thought that was very interesting that climate change happened over 4,000 years ago. It couldn't have been man-caused then, and it ain't man-caused now. And that the enemies of the Akkadian Empire built a wall so they couldn't immigrate into their lands. What a shocker. Unbelievable. I'll be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby!
Alright, welcome back, and once again, thank you for watching. So, Democrat constitutional amendments. This is a joke. I think they know it's a joke. Man, it's getting cold out here all of a sudden. Oh well. We'll soldier through as we always do, or as I always do. You're sitting home in the warmth watching or whatever. So Democrat Representative Steve Cohen of Tennessee introduced 2 constitutional amendments Thursday that would eliminate the Electoral College and stop presidents from pardoning themselves and family members and whatnot. Whatever they don't want Trump to do, that's what they're gonna have a constitutional amendment for. All right. Well, what do you say about something that's just this darn stupid? I mean, the problem is, I've heard this guy speak, this Steve Cohen guy, and he doesn't sound like a stupid guy. But what he says, he's a radical leftist progressive, who, if he had the chance, he and many other Democrats would completely tear up the Constitution from first page to last and try to rewrite it in the image of Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson. That's what they want to do. And don't let anyone fool you into thinking otherwise. That's what they want to do. Just like the Franklin Roosevelt's second Bill of Rights. It's all a bunch of nonsense, government giveaways, which half of them have come true probably. Actually, yes, definitely. But at any rate, so but the problem is the Democrats are so dishonest and they're so power hungry, and I can't believe that anyone believes them, that they're trying to do this for the good of the country or for the good of the democracy, which we're not. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But the problem is they just can't stomach Trump aside. They just can't stomach anyone but Democrats being in power, and being in the seat of power and government. Because they know, and we know at this point, that government controls everything. It controls almost every aspect of our lives to a certain extent, and it's their birthright to be in charge of all that. And then when somebody, like some buffoon like Trump, gets elected, well, that's just the last straw. Something has to be done. But constitutional amendments are damn near impossible, excuse my French, are darned near impossible to pull off, and the founders did it that way for a reason. To change the Constitution is supposed to be really difficult. It's supposed to take a long time. People are supposed to think about it before they jump in and just change it. It's not like the South African Constitution, like notorious RBG wants to do. Just rewrite it anytime you get a majority vote and the Constitution's changed. Well, the founders were smarter than that, and they knew it took a painful process. It takes 2/3 of the House and Senate just to propose amendments, to call for a convention, and then after they propose it and they vote on it, and constitutional amendments are passed through the House and Senate, then it goes to the states, and it takes years and years and years. And 3/4 of the states have to ratify a constitutional amendment to make it an amendment, and that's why the Constitution's only been changed since after the Bill of Rights 17 times, and that obviously doesn't count the first 10, the Bill of Rights. So it's only been changed 17 times in several hundred years, 250 years or whatever it's been. And the last one, the 27th Amendment, it was ratified in 1992, so that's already 20 some odd years, 26 years ago or whatever the heck it's been, 27 years. And but it was originally proposed in 1789, and it took till 1992 to be ratified. So it's supposed to be a painfully long process. All right. Okay, so about Cohen's amendments. First, the pardon thing, all right? And this is all and only about Trump, and we all know it. Cohen wants to prevent Trump from being able to pardon colleagues and family members should they be convicted of whoever the crap knows what, all right? But the problem is that the pardon language in the Constitution couldn't be any clearer. Quote, he, the president, shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment, unquote. Pretty freaking clear if you asked me. And even if you didn't ask me, I would tell you that. So he can pardon anyone who causes an offense against the United States. That's a federal offense. So if somebody's convicted in a state court, county court, whatever it happens to be, the president cannot pardon him because that's a state offense, not a federal offense. That's it, okay? And he can't pardon himself. I don't even understand this at all. A president can't pardon himself because this is the way it works. A sitting president can't be tried in court and convicted of anything. The only way to get him out of office is he must first be impeached by the House. Then, after he's impeached by the House, it goes to the Senate where he's tried, and if he's convicted, then they can remove him from office. Then he becomes a private citizen who can't pardon anybody. So all this is a moot freaking point. It's ridiculous. Pardoning himself. What a joke. So we're going to take another quick break, then we'll get to the Electoral College, one of my favorite topics, and then we'll wrap it up. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby!
Welcome back. Once again, thank you for watching. I'm Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and this is the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. So finally, last topic, the Electoral College. I think this, more than anything, frankly, shows the genius of the founders setting up the Electoral College for presidential elections only. Now remember, the presidency is the only national election. Some people don't think in these terms, and maybe a lot of people probably don't even know that Congress and the Senate aren't national elections. The House members are elected by the people of each state, of their respective states, and the senators were originally selected by their state legislators to represent the states. So the president represents the nation, the House represents the people, and the Senate represents the individual states. That's the way it was set up, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Of course, the progressives changed that for the Senate, but that's probably no going back to that, unfortunately. And this is, boys and girls, called a representative republic, not a freaking democracy. I wish people would stop saying it's a democracy. It isn't. The Democrats tell you that it's a democracy time and time and time again, so people think that they're living in a democracy. They're not. Don't get used to that daggum term. It's bogus. We're not a dang democracy. We're a constitutional representative republic. Period. Woo! And that's the beauty of the constitutional representative republic, is all parties get a voice, not just 51% majority. That's a democracy. Okay? What was it described as? A democracy are two wolves and a sheep voting for what to have for dinner. I mean, really? Think about it. Okay, so anywho, as a practical point, the Electoral College is vital to our republic. Without it, Mr. Cohen, not a single presidential candidate would ever darken your state, would never go into your bumpkin state of Tennessee. Maybe they'd stop by Memphis because of the population, but that'd be about it, and probably wouldn't even bother doing that. Most of us would never even hear or see a presidential candidate. If you wanted to hear or see a presidential candidate, you'd have to go to New York City or Los Angeles or Houston or Dallas or some other major metropolitan area, San Francisco, San Diego, maybe Chicago, Boston, whatever. But if you're not around a major city, you're never going to see a presidential candidate again. That's ridiculous. There wouldn't be any Iowa caucuses. There wouldn't be New Hampshire primaries. There wouldn't be any of that crap. There wouldn't be any necessity for it. So it's basically, they'd concentrate, every presidential candidate would be forced to concentrate their efforts in New York, California, Texas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, maybe a couple of cities in Florida, and Ohio maybe, and frankly, that's about it. And that's all the population you need to win the popular vote. And that's why the Hillary was so upset that she won the popular vote. Of course she won the popular vote. That's where all the people are. That's the concentration of people are in these major cities. And that's what a democracy would give you. All right? Or that's what a popular vote in lieu of the Electoral College. If we got rid of the Electoral College, that's exactly what would happen. And none of these flyby states or flyover states would have any voice in government at all. But that's the point. That's the deviousness of the Democrat plan to get rid of the Electoral College. The Republicans would never win another presidency ever. Ever. That's it. Because we couldn't win the major cities. That's it. But the real and another reason why the Democrats hate the Electoral College is that it's decidedly fair. It gives flyover states, like I said, clout that they would never have if there was just a popular vote. Every state gets a voice, not just the ones with the largest population centers. And Democrats don't like the fairness when it doesn't work in their favor. They're all about fairness, except for in this particular case, where it's fair to give everyone a voice, even the little bitty states, Delaware, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, these states, all the flyover states, none of us would get a voice. And also they can't cheat with the Electoral College. They can't do the vote harvesting like with the popular vote they did in California to win all those seats back from the Republicans and whatnot. The Electoral College is the fairest way to do things because the states decide on the electors, and then so each state gets a vote, and that's the way it works. So that's all I've got. Hopefully none of these amendments will see the light of day. I can't believe that they ever would. But this is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist in the chilly northeast. I don't know. And that's all I got. See you.